Welcome, SpaceChem contestants, to the 2017 SpaceChem tournament. We're going to do a double header this time since I finally have some decent video equipment. Well, audio equipment. We're going to look at round 4, What a Waste, and round 5, Long Slog. Both of these puzzles shared a property where producing 10 outputs was really just the checkered flag at the finish line. The real problem in What a Waste was how to store all the waste somewhere in the reactor that these solutions generate. And in Log Slog, it was what to do with such long running solutions. It took at least 15 minutes to run pretty much all these solutions. And so, let us look at Cactus's solution, which is both the longest and the most symbol-heavy solution. Let's see how he does it. So he puts the splitter in the input zone and the bonders. Bonders are relatively close. So these atoms split in such a way that you have no choice. You can't use the zirconium for anything. It won't split down to beryllium. You have to split the odd one. So the ytterbium splits into calcium and potassium. Potassium splits into neon, which is another problem. The neon is a noble gas and it won't bond to anything. Finally, the fluorine splits into boron and our target, beryllium. So you had a problem. You could build sticks out of everything except the neon. In this case, Cactus is splitting the neon into 2 borons and building a stick of length 5 for each beryllium output. So we're going to have a total of 50 atoms that we've got to store in the reactor in order to produce the 10 beryllium outputs. And this solution builds sticks of length 10. So each stick represents 2 beryllium outputs. It's pretty simple heavy though, a lot of flip-flops, a lot of special handling to park the stick down at the bottom, the next stick just above it. There's the next stick. And we ran out of room in the bottom. We still must leave some room here, so the 4th stick got put on the top row. And we are building the final stick here. But because the neon is handled after the output, we don't have to worry about this last stick pushing into the path that the beryllium needs. Output, and we are done. So that is a score of 0.339. Next up we have JFB 1337. Alright, a similar setup. Splitter in the input zone. But he's going to build sticks vertically. Let's see how this one works. And he's also going to sense the neon and have special handling for that. So the neon goes over there. Send the beryllium all the way over to the other side. Then come back and split the neon. And then we have special handling for where to put each stick. We're only building sticks of length 5 since we don't have room for a stick of length 10 if we're doing it vertically. And then this here is all intended to position the sticks in the bottom of the reactor. So it's shuffling them all along. Grab next, drop. And when we are finally done, have room for one last stick. And before we need to shuffle it over, we will output the last beryllium. And we are done. Alright, so A little faster, fewer symbols than Cactus, so this scores a little better, 0.408. So one of the questions about What a Waste was, could you use particle smashing? Both of these solutions did not. Could you use particle smashing to get rid of the waste? And yes, actually you could. And it turned out you can even use particle smashing to get rid of a neon. We will see how that's done later. Next up we have Mr. Blarney's solution. So we've positioned the splitter and the bonders towards the right side of the input zone. And Mr. Blarney is also splitting the neon into two borons. And then using special handling to position these 5-length sticks down at the bottom of the reactor. Dropping off the berylliums right here, so we're not dropping it all the way over to the edge, which makes this go a little faster. But it does cut down on the room for storing a stick. Well, these sticks are going all over the reactor. That's where he's dropping the beryllium, right there. Okay, so one less symbol, a little bit faster yet for a score of 0.412. Pardon me, I should restate that. That's a score of 0.631 for Cactus, 0.776 for JFB, 0.902 for Mr. Blarney. Those were just the symbol count scores I was giving earlier. Next up is Spare Wizard with a score of 0.909. And let's see what he did. So splitter in the input zone, building sticks one row further down. And we're building them horizontally. So let's see how that works. Okay, over here we see that he is storing the neon rather than splitting them. So this is the first solution we've seen that does that. We have a lot of flip-flops to store each neon. First, the red stores the neons here, and then later on, blue will move them over here so that red can store them there again. So fairly nice compact neon storage. And we have sticks of length 3 instead of 5 because we're storing the neons. All right. Fewer symbols, a little faster yet. 0.909. Next up is Blue-Eyed Rat with a score of 1.022. And here we have, this is a fairly typical strategy for storing things like noble gases. It's a big loop that you go through twice to drop neons in every other spot. When you add a new neon, it goes in the first location, and then all the others get shuffled down one spot, and then you run through the loop again to move all the neons down a spot to open up that first spot again for neon storage. Actually, right there's the first neon storage. And we have positioned, this time we've positioned the splitter in the output zone. And the advantage of that is, of course, as soon as we have the beryllium, we don't have to carry it over, we just output. Split, output, and finished. It does make building the sticks a little more complicated. So here the bonders are positioned right here. And we are building the sticks from the right side back towards the left. One problem with doing it that way is he avoids it by having the bonders in the alpha output, or the psi output zone. But if it was down here, you would have to be sure that your molecule was attached before you attempted to output the beryllium, or you would also output the wrong molecule from the stick before it bonded. And we have down here our nice little shuffle to move the sticks down as they're produced. And there we go, 739, 72. So just a little better yet, getting faster and fewer symbols each time we've improved in both categories, for a score of 1.022. Next up we have content context, with just a little bit higher score, 1.026. And here we are building our sticks in the input zone. Everything's in the input zone this time. So let's see how this one works. And of course we have to ferry the beryllium over, and we are taking our neons and producing two boron. So the advantage of a 5-length stick here is it won't fit in the output zone, and there's no danger of it being accidentally output. Let us see where this stores all the waste. Whoops, run through that again. Alright, we don't actually have to store this last stick, because as soon as we output, we're finished. So the red Waldo is still carrying around the waste stick, which has nowhere to go, but that's okay. And so we improved a little bit more. Well, our symbol count got worse, but more than compensated for by a faster running time, 634, for a score of 1.026. Next up we have Twist Ya. So now we're building our sticks in the beta input zone. And we're using the sensor several times. And we have our big loop for storing neons. One of the problems with the neon loop is you don't want to have it doing any zigzags if you can help it. So this avoids that problem by making a big loop. Try to keep the number of arrow symbols down. And here's our final output. Now what some people did was you can save a symbol right here if you get rid of this last grab drop, and keep that one a plain drop. So let's have a look at that. Change that to a drop and get rid of that. Because we don't care about making room on the last go around. And so there we are. Twist Ya scores 1.042. Next up we have Astro-Nelson solution scoring 1.060. Everything in the input zone. And let's see what we're going to do with the neons. We're going to store it in a big loop. This is a very similar looking loop, trying to keep those arrows cut down. And here he is, instead of using just a plain drop, he is letting it grab the last neon, and it is going to crash into the first neon, except that we're going to drop the last beryllium and output it before that happens. So we have stored sticks of 8, now this is 10 sticks, and our 10 neons there. 623 and 79. So a little faster, and the symbol count is fairly similar, but it's enough to score a little bit higher, 1.06. Next up, we have Rex kicks. So here again, we see we're going to store the neons. We're not going to split them into borons. Here is our neon storage loop. Looks very similar. Trying to keep those arrows minimized. What's interesting about this is much lower symbols. How are we going to store all the sticks? So we're creating vertical sticks of, well, we create them horizontally, sticks of 3 length, then we rotate them and stick them together. So we're getting a nice comb shape here. And that keeps our Waldos from having to venture over here. Our last neon. And finally, the final beryllium. So this stick, we're not going to bond it. And this neon, we're not going to put in our storage here. It's just going to sit there. But once again, we see the little technique of eliminating one grab drop by making the last one into just a drop. Let's see how that works. Yep, still works. Good enough for a score of 1.088. Next up, we have eTemmate. So we have another neon storage section here, this time over in the beta input. And we've got our splitter, so we've got to carry our gold all the way over to the output zone. We have our splitter in the output zone, just output the beryllium, and you always have to be careful that any garbage sticks you create extend beyond the output zone so they are not accidentally output when you do it this way. So here we are creating vertical sticks of size 6. This is why the gold had to go along the top row to get out of the way of those sticks. And let's see that again. Alright, so here we are approaching our final output. One last stick, one last time through. We didn't get all the way through the neon loop, so as with some of the other solutions, we could probably get rid of that. Let's see if that works. Yes. Okay, score of 1.131. Next up, Seegers. So we have our neon storage loop, and this is what I was talking about. If it is all possible, avoid this kind of a zigzag, because that really burns up arrow symbols. But sometimes you have to do that. That accounts for the somewhat higher symbol count of this puzzle, is doing these zigzags. Now this one, we've got our splitter and our bonder in the beta input zones. So we're building sticks into our output zone, and we are dropping off our berylliums down here out of the way. length 6 garbage sticks, each representing 2 outputs. Alright, and our final beryllium. So yes, once again, could have saved one symbol right here. Get rid of that symbol, change that to a drop. Same solution, one less symbol. Good enough for a score of 1.138. Next up, we have resumes. Alright, so back to the input zone. Let's see what we're doing here. We do not see any large chain of grab drops, so he is not storing the neon, he is splitting it into borons. And interestingly, we're not building sticks of length 5, at least not the first time. There's our stick of length 5. And let's see. That's why. Stick of length 4, stick of length 4, stick of length 5. So a lot of special handling to get these sticks to fit into the different places. Interesting zigzag storage pattern. And here we are coming up on our final output. Alright, drop it off, store it, so we don't care where this last stick goes. Alright, good enough for a score of 1.168. This is the fastest solution we've seen yet, only a few cycles faster than Seeger's. And the symbol count is 75 is a fairly average symbol count. Next up is Zig. Alright, so we've got to carry the gold over to the output zone. But then we don't have to carry the berylliums. And we are splitting our neons into 2 borons and storing. So lots of handling to store all the waste. Let's see where it all ends up. Okay. 5 length sticks, 3 deep on the bottom and 1 row at the top. And our final stick, we're going to carry it around, we'll leave it over there. And the last stick does not finish filling before we're done. So our new fastest solution by 8 cycles and 1 less symbol scores a little higher, 1.184. Next up, aperture. So we're back to storing the neon, but this time he has got a big loop with no bends in the loop, just a big box. And let's see how this works out. We keep our splitter and bonders down here. And so we are building sticks of length 3 and then we're building a comb again. And here is our last gold. This one is fairly fast because blue spends the bulk of its time shuttling the neons around, which leaves red free to do other things. Much lower symbol count and fairly average cycle count. Good enough for a score of 1.226. Next up we have Pseudodude. And here we are splitting our neons into borons and storing sticks all over the reactor. Let's see how this works. Stick of length 5. Moved up there. Next stick of length 5. Here. Using the sensor quite a lot. So interestingly, this bottom area of 5, they could have put a stick down there, but apparently it wasn't worth doing. One to go. So we just leave the final stick on its build site because we don't need to move it anywhere. Drop our last beryllium off and we are done. A little bit heavier on the symbols to put all those sticks all over the reactor, but a very fast solution. This is our new fastest solution. Good enough for a score of 1.274. Next up is counterpoint. So we're back to a double loop here, a C-shaped area to store our neons. With our splitter positioned at the output zones, we can just send the beryllium. And we are building sticks of size 6, storing them just out of the way. We have to stay out of the way of that gold, so they can't be any bigger than 6. Here's our last gold. Okay, our new fastest solution, 442. A few less symbols. Score of 1.336. Next up, in 4th place now, is Darius 1. So we have a solution that's going to be storing sticks. There's obviously no loop for neons, so we're breaking our neons into pieces, into borons. But not immediately. No, actually we are storing the neons all over the reactor. Rather than a loop to store the neons, we are using flip-flops. And so our final neon, this part is pretty neat. Here's our last neon. When we stored this neon, this flip-flop started off, so now it's activated. And what will happen is the blue Waldo is going to be permanently stuck on this space now, and the flip-flop will just change active, deactive. But that's okay, because this is our last one. So much lower symbol count, just 59 symbols, and still reasonably fast. Not as fast as the ones we've seen, but pretty fast. This is a good score, 1.375. In 3rd place, we have Laylite. So you look at this, and you realize there's not a lot of symbols in this. This is only 43 symbols. This is let's see how he does it. Here is going to be our first particle smasher, I believe. Yes. In order to do what's known as a rotate smash, you have to build something of size, at least 4 atoms, a stick of length 4. Then what you can do is smash. Because when you do the rotate, it doesn't check for a collision until it is all the way on the bonders, and if you bond, then the atom just goes away. So here we are. We are smashing into it, and we are about to hit the bond, and it even works on noble gases. So this is a neon, and it is gone. Interestingly, it seems it's not necessary we've already got 3 atoms here, or 3 bonds between these 2 atoms, yet the smash still works. And so with no waste sticks to store anywhere, though the waldos don't have to travel very far, we only need to go from the input to the output, which makes for a very low symbol count solution. And it's still pretty fast. So here we are coming up on our final one. Now, I must admit, I didn't know that you could smash a noble gas, or that you could smash with all 3 of those bonds in place. And our final, there we go. We had to do our counting and our final output. So because of the particle smashing, this is a much lower symbol count. But it's not that fast. Back up into the 600. Still good enough for third place, 1.473. In second place, we have Sir Baldrig. Sir Baldrig made the fastest solution. So let's see how this works. And we see that red is not doing very much. Red's job is to fetch the input atom and then build our stick. Blue does the heavy lifting of moving the sticks to the different parts of the reactor. And you see that red has to do this. Red is doing this in a very tight loop. That's what makes this so fast. We're also splitting our neons. It's a little more work to do that, but then you don't have the trouble of storing the neons anywhere. In order for red to do this loop, though, blue must do an awful lot of splits, which increased our symbol count. 71 symbols. But there's no particle smashing in this one. And here we come up on our final one, leaving our last incomplete stick on the build. 345. This is our fastest solution. Hurt by taking 71 symbols, but when you've got to have splits in order to do such tight loops. The other Waldo had to do a lot of splitting. Good enough. 1.563. So almost a full tenth of a point ahead of third place. In first place, we have our current leader, Tough Thought. And here you can see there's just not very much in the way of Waldo path, which we're not doing any loop to store neons, and we're not running any Waldo anywhere over the reactor to store sticks, so that means this can only be doing one thing, smashing. So here's how Tough Thought does the smashes. Tough Thought has blue stuck in a permanent little loop here. This actually takes 4 cycles, although it's only too long because you're doing a rotate on at each end of this very short line. We are debonding at this point on this loop, and then we come back up, we drop our garbage off, and we hit the bond as we smash in. So this goes up to 2 bonds and then destroys that bit of waste. We keep doing that until we have met our target atom. There is our boron. So now we know that we have done enough, and we take a different path. We're still going to smash the boron after we output the beryllium. And then go back and get our next atom and do it all over again. So this makes for a very low symbol count. This is our lowest symbol count solution, and it's still decently fast. 40 symbols, 507 cycles. Our top score, 1.68. All right, so that is our results for What a Waste. The two particle smashing solutions got first and third place respectively, and our fastest solution, not a particle smasher, got second place. So not impossible to do well without particle smashing. And now what about our other puzzle, Long Slog? So round 5 puzzle, Long Slog, and the problem in this puzzle is that it just takes a long time to run the solutions. And I'm sure everybody's been wondering, am I really going to make a 10-hour video and show everybody's solution from start to finish? Well, of course not. But I did run all the solutions, make sure they all work. And let's see what kind of a problem this is. So the reason this puzzle takes so long, first off, we're doing a maximum amount of fusion possible. We are fusing hydrogens into meitneriums. 109 fuse actions for each one, and we've got to build a sheet of 32 atoms. So 3,488 fusions to build one sheet. And then to further add to the time, these hydrogen atoms come in at random locations, spread as far apart as possible in the corner and 3 spaces away, and the other the side, and then this middle spot, which I thought was the worst possible place to put them, because it means you can't put your bonders right in the middle. You would have to, if this atom came in up here instead, that would give you a little more flexibility, but since it comes in down here, you have to build these sheets. We only have 2 bonders, and you have to make 2 bonds in the vertical direction. Making 2 bonds in the vertical direction added a little bit to the cycle count, but not much. The most significant part was having to trundle along here to grab the input atom no matter where it appeared, and then transport it over to the fuser wherever you put it. Grab it there, so that time it appeared there. Appeared there. Going to have one appear up here pretty soon. Yes. Okay, and this particular solution, we are dropping our atom right here, and it is very critical. In order to have a fast solution, you want this part of your puzzle to be as fast as possible. So we're dropping, we're fusing. I wonder, probably would not work to have a fuse and just turn back that direction. So let's see what happens when we build our first meitnerium atom, which will take a while. 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Because another problem is that the game only runs at maximum speed of 400 cycles per second. So a solution that takes 400,000 cycles is going to take between 16 and 17 minutes to execute. There is a question of how fast is it possible to go, and it looks like getting under 300,000 cycles just may not be possible. So here we are coming up on our first meitnerium. Alright, so this time red does not transport the last one. We have done our counting. I hope everybody found the guide to counting with flip-flops useful for this sort of work. And we hit a sync, and we have blue doing the last ones. And blue, instead of dropping, is just going to fuse and keep carrying our meitnerium, carry it down here to our bonders, where we are going to build a stick of length 4. This is pretty much what everybody did. When the stick reaches length 4, we will, of course, grab that, rotate it, and then we've got to build the sticks of 4 into a sheet. All right, so here we are. We have 3 meitneriums, and we're about to make our 4th one. Add that on, grab hold, rotate, drop into place. If there was a sheet over here, now red would grab hold of it, drag it over, and we have both Waldos issuing bond commands so that we can make our double bond as we drag it back over. So let's see that meitnerium stick added to the sheet. Rotate, drop, grab hold, lift it up one spot, add our bonds. And here, when our sheet gets to 8 high, we're using the technique of grabbing the top row, moving it over one spot, and then outputting it. Because this hangs over the edge, it will not output until it is all the way to the top and can be grabbed. This is one of our slowest solutions, actually our slowest final submission, 880,000 cycles. And it's pretty symbol heavy too, 102 symbols to do all this. And what is so critical to get the cycle count down, improving things out here is not going to save that many cycles. You make an improvement out here, you save 600 cycles, a few hundred cycles, and who cares if you're dealing with 800,000. It's in here, if you can shorten this loop, you're going to see improvements on the order of tens of thousands of cycles. A much more significant improvement. All right, so we saw about 88,000 cycles to build one sheet. Next up, we have JFB1337. Who has given us this. The red Waldo is doing our loop to build our meitnerium atoms. And it is also taking this path here to help build the sheets. So red has a fairly long loop, and that makes this, unfortunately, a pretty slow solution. Blue is doing the counting, and we are seeing here the technique of 2 sinks times 2 times 4 times, this is a times 3, so times 12, up to 24. 3 more is 72. And then another 3. Well, that can't be right. Ah, yes, red is going through 2 synchronizes. So this is actually 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27 times 2 is 54 times 2 is 108. So we need one more sync somewhere right there to get to 109. Because red takes such a long path, it takes a very long time to produce one meitnerium. And then we have the problem of we've got our 4 meitneriums. What do we do for our sheet building? Okay, carry it over, leave it on the bonder. If we had other sticks, our sheet being built, we would drag it over here, and now this is what our 2 sinks are for. This sink activates red on this path. So we drag our sheet 2 spots into position, and then red takes over. Blue helps with 2 bonds there. Red hits these 2 bonds twice, creating our double bonds. Let's see that with an actual stick. All right, here we are with a stick. Put it in position. Start red on its path, slide over, 1, 1, 1. 2 bonds because of that one and that one. Come back. Hit those bonds again. Drop it off. 3 of our vertical bonds are done. We need 1 more. And blue is going to provide that last bond before it drags the stick over and down a spot. So how do we know when to output? This one looks like it's using counting to know when to do the final output. Here is our output symbol. Yes, we're going to count to 8 on the sticks. Once we've 2, 4, 8. When we reach 8, we hit the output symbol and send on our way. Cactus scored 0.999. This solution by JFB scores 1.083. Next up is content context. Alright, so what are we doing here? We have a little bit tighter loop, building our meitneriums up here. And this is the, well, the lazy man's way of counting with flip-flops. If you just chain flip-flops together, you can count 1 per flip-flop in your chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then with this loop here, and content context is, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so this is 2 times 5 times 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like 11. Which would get us to 110. And building our stick that way. Well, one of the things I've wondered about this, it always seems like you wish the flip-flops defaulted to on at the start instead of off. Would sure save a lot of arrow symbols. What a lot of people do is the technique of starting the Waldo instead of starting here. If we had started the Waldo back here somewhere, right there, and we run all the way through these flip-flops, we can set them all on and then begin our loop. And saving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Have to add an arrow symbol there, or we could could do it there. About 14 symbols. We are also counting with the blue Waldo. Takes a lot of symbols, but it does work. So this is our highest symbol count, 119 symbols. But it's much faster because it uses a shorter loop. We do have to go out here to do some counting. But a lot of the times we are running a loop of just 12 cycles right here for 558,628 cycles total. And the way we build our sheet so we grab hold, put that in place. We have the grab, the rotate. Okay, hold it here and wait while blue carries the rest of the sheet over. Drop the sheet off. And then 4 bonds, red and blue. So they will cooperate in creating the double bonds. And then red drops the sheet off. And as for detecting when we have all our sheets, blue does that in here, this little area here. When we have 8 sticks, 2, 4, 8, we will output it. All right, next up is Twistia. Twistia's solution takes a very long time, but it uses a lot less symbols, so it scored a little better. 82 symbols. Why does it take such a long time? We have a pretty complicated bunch of flip-flops here, so red's got to do counting. It has to take a long path in order to do that. So it is possible to count to 109 with just 7 flip-flops. It's a power of 2. It takes 7 flip-flops can count to any value up to 128, 2 to the 7. And the way you cut the count down is you have to keep feeding back in. That's what this part does here. To reset flip-flops, so you don't want to count to 128, you want to count to a little bit less than that. This one, however, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 flip-flops. And then we have 2 more down here. So these are to count to 4. I'm not sure what this part is for. Just needed a little bit of a delay. Build our stick. And now rotate, position, grab hold of our sheet, move it up 1 row, drop it off, and red and blue cooperate to do the double bonding. How do we tell when to output the sheet when we've got 8 sticks all bonded together? That is this section right here, 2, 4, 8 output. Takes a lot of symbols to do it that way, but it does work. And so this solution, 82 symbols, 588,000 cycles, because red does have a lot of motion it's got to go through up here. Next up is Zig. This is first solution to get under 500,000, 499, 661, and a little higher symbol count though, 94. So here is Zig's solution. Now this time we have blue just doing the loop. This is a loop of size 14, so that does slow things down. Red inputs and does the counting here. And let's see what we've got for counting. There's 2, This is right here is 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. Times 2 more. 12 times, no, this is a 3. So 3 times 2 times 3 is 18. Times 3 more is 54. Then, what does red do after 54? We go up here, we add 1. Well, 54 times 2 is 108. So that's what we're doing here. We have 2 sinks. That's how we're doing it. Sink A, sink A. 54 times 2, 108. And then this is for the 109. Then, as far as the stick building goes, he actually has the blue wall mostly handling that. It has to be timed, though red has to issue a bond command. And where does red do that? Okay, we get our last one. We input it. No, red is doing the building here. Well, red grabs, drops, issues the bond. Blue carries it down 1 spot. And we have a build our next one. What happens? How do we stitch our sheet together? Oh, all right, we stitch our sheet together. We've got to do the rotate. Leave it on the bonder. Go over here. Move our sheet up 1 spot. Get it into position. Do a bond. All right, and this is why blue has this extended loop here, so it can help out by moving 1 spot over. So red does a double bond, blue moves it 1 spot. Red does another 2 bonds, blue moves it 1 more spot. Red does a final 2 bonds, and then finishes carrying it over. And then we need to know when our sheet has got to a size 8. So here is our output symbol down here. And we are, what are we doing? Running around hitting that again. All right, so here is how we count to 8. There, there, and there. All right. Score of 1.370. The previous one was 1.35. So very close. Next up, with a score of 1.428 is Rex Kicks. Rex Kicks has... There it is. It's one of the first ones to send it in. So what are we doing in this one? Okay, red's job is to build the Meitnerium atom and to do the counting. So blue is just simply sitting there on a synchronized waiting until a Meitnerium has been built. Then blue will build the stick. Okay, 1 through there, synchronize. Build our stick. Here is our count to 4. Once we have built the stick, okay, blue grabs hold. We have counted to 4, so red now is on this path here. Red will rotate it, put it in position. Blue grabs hold. Now this one is using the technique of running it over twice. So we're going to run over the bonds this direction and create just 1 bond. drop it off in the last spot, hit that bond command, come back, hit the bond command again to get our second one, and then run over these bonds again. So it saves a few symbols doing it this way. And there it is. Now how do we tell when we've gotten to 8? One last grab. Reposition. We tell because red, while blue was doing this, red came down here and grabbed hold. If it had been 8 high, it would grab hold, move it, and output it. Since it isn't, nothing gets output. So that's how this one works. 578,000, it's not very fast because the red loop has to come down here, so it's 12 plus the time to do the counts. But it's a lower symbol count. It's our lowest symbol count so far, so it scores a little better, 1.428. Next up, we have aperture. A little higher symbol count, but this one is faster. So let's see what we've got going on here. All right, we got our symbol count down by starting way back here and setting all these flip-flops the way we want to at the start. And now, red is going to build the Minarium while blue waits. When it is done, blue will carry it over here to build our stick. So red is doing the counting. Let's see what kind of counting we've got here. 2, 4. So this is a 5 because when we hit this flip-flop, we go back over here and trigger that. That's the way you do count to 5, which is 3 flip-flops, just like this. 5 times 2 is 10 times, so 20. Okay, these two feed back in here. So this is a count mechanism that counts to 109. And when we get to 109, like there, they are all deactivated, and we'll come down here and we will synchronize and build our stick. So we do that. Here's our flip-flops to count to 4, get our stick of length 4 when that is done. Alright, here we are, about to build our second stick and attach it, begin building our sheet. Alright, so we've built 4, we come through here, and we have red waiting, while blue grabs hold and leaves that new stick right there, which means blue, okay, it was a timing matter. Starts red on its path, blue will match it, and now they are both traveling at the same time. Build our bond, bounce back and reuse these bonders, so blue has to do 1 additional bond right there. And then to detect when our sheet is finished, we're doing our classic grab the other end down here, since this sheet is stored just off, so it can't be output. If it's 8 long, grab it, move it over, output it. Alright, so 83 symbols, but a bit faster, 508,000, for a score of 1.44. Next up, we have Seeger's 1.445. More symbols, but this one is quite a bit faster, so that makes the difference. It scores just a little better. The reason it's faster is because we have red on a permanent loop of size 12 here. So here's our initial startup. Blue moved the first hydrogen over there, and then from then on we can just do fuses. And we are doing 2 syncs in our red loop. So blue is doing the counting. Blue has to pass through 2 sinks each time. Reusing the sinks. Let's see, I do not yet see how we're counting to 109 here. Well, this one is a very complicated system of counting here. When we enter here, we go through this group of sinks down here. This is where blue spends most of its time. Up here, 12 times, 12 sinks. 2 more up here. Then we have this section, which counts up to 5, and this which cuts back in. But because red is going through 2 sinks, we don't need to count to 109. We need to count to 218, effectively. And then once we've got our sticks built, of course, we will build our sheet. And let's see how that part works. Grab hold, there's the rotate. Blue has to do all the work because red is only in this loop. Then red comes over here, raises it up, moves it into place. All right, so we are starting at this end, 2 bonds, grab hold. So we're going to move the sheet 1 spot and each time create 2 additional bonds. Fairly simple, heavy way to do that, but it works. And then we position our sheet there, and if it is 8 high, we will do our grab over and output. All right, so and that was Seeger's solution. 439,721, 98 symbols, score of 1.445. Next up is Curse Flames, who did not submit anything in round 4, but he comes back with this one for a score of 1.509. Let's see, where did I hide Curse Flame solution? There it is. All right, we have blue doing our loop. Just 1 synchronized in this loop. So red has to do the counting. And let's see what we've got here in the way of counting. Okay, we're going to hit this 1 synchronize. And the rest of our counting we're doing with flip-flops. So this little section, this is a 5 count, I believe. Times 2 times another 2, and then this, since we are sending them back to the first one, this is our counting to 109 with 7 flip-flops. Once we have got to 109, then red comes out of this loop, builds the stick. Once the stick is length 4, that's what these 2 flip-flops count. We grab hold, rotate, hold the stick up here. Interestingly, we are going to start our bonding in the middle. No, we're not. Just went through a loop to get over twice. All right, we're using the technique of running over these bond commands twice in order to get our 2 bonds. So we get 1 bond, grab hold, last bond, second bond as we come back, and leave our stick back here. And right here, it is now in position to be output if it is tall enough. And he is using counting to determine when to output. If we have not counted to 8, then we go back here and we'll move the stick down a row, or the sheet down a row, and build our next stick. So, score of over 1.5. Next up is Leylight. Leylight's first solution was an incredibly long, no, it was not this one. That took 3 million cycles. It took a couple of hours to run through it. Yes, here is our 3 million cycle solution. And the reason it takes such a long time is that no Waldo is doing a tight loop here to gather our hydrogens and fuse them. Instead, the Waldos are running through the entire track every single time. So each time you add one hydrogen, you are checking to see if it's a meitnerium and building stick and making the sheet, and checking if the sheet is finished for each single hydrogen, which makes this a very slow solution. And you can see here that at maximum speed, our atom is building up very slowly. You can also see how the Waldos are running over the complete track every single time. So this was our slowest solution, and Leylight has sent in a better one for the deadline. So let's look at that one. All right, here we have chopped red down to just our loop to gather and fuse. And blue is doing the counting. Now this counting is less flip-flops and more synchronizes. So we have this stick here of synchronizes. So you're hitting 5 synchronizes each time. And let's see how this works. Then you 5. You've got to go through that. So that's an 11. And you've got to go through that here. Okay, so that's 11. Do it again. And again. Well, this one has to go through there. And let's see how we get to 109. 106. All right, so we counted to 107 before we exit our loop. And so we pick up this additional sync here to get to the last point. And it's a race. Red gets there just ahead, make our meitnerium, and build our stick. Then of course we are counting to 4 down here. When we've built a stick of length 4, then we bond it in. And Leylight is using the technique of once the stick, the sheet is 8 sticks high, we'll grab the end of it, move it over and output it. All right, so this solution, a little lighter on the symbols, 76. And, oh, pardon me, Cursed Flames was a fairly fast solution, 427 3000. This is the one this one runs at 499 267. And just as a minor point of interest, Zig's solution was also 499,000. It's just 400, just a little less than 400 difference. These, I was wondering how close people would get to each other. These two, Leylight and Zig, were the closest ones in cycle count. Next up, we have Spare Wizard. Little more symbols, but a bit faster, so it scores a bit higher. 1.524. 81 symbols. 466,259 cycles. And so we have blue doing our counting. Red is doing just waiting on the sync. So let's see how the counting works in this. So here we have 2 and 3 and 3 more. So 6, 18. This is a count of 2 and then 3 more. So 1836 times 3. 108. And then a final input in sync right here. Not sure what that sync is for. And then when we get out of our sheet, of our stick building, do our rotate, and have red help out. Red's been hanging on, spends most of his time hanging on this synchronize command. As soon as we hit that, yeah, that's what the syncs are for. Grab sync there, help build our sheet. Alright, here we are, building our last frame for this sheet. Now we have blue waiting. Red moves into position, builds 2 bonds, sets blue off. They both cooperate to put the last bonds, drop. How do we know to output this? We're counting to 8. Alright. Next up, Mr. Blarney, whose solution runs almost the same speed, 466,756, a difference of just 500 between these two. However, with one less symbol, that more than compensates for 500 measly more cycles, so Mr. Blarney scores a little higher, 1.532. And we are, how are we counting again? Well, there's 2 and 3, 6, and 2 more, and 2 more. 12, 24, no, this is 3 more. 12 times 3 is 36, times 3 more, 108. And then one more synchronized to get to 109. 2 flip-flops to do times 4 to build our stick. When the stick is built, we go down here and we make our sheet, drop into place. Whoops, just missed that one. 2 bonds, let's see. Oh, blue does the work of building the sheet. And then red will detect when the sheet has gotten to size 8. Move it over and output it. If it is not size 8, then blue will grab hold, move it over and up, or, well, down. Alright, that was Mr. Blarney. Next is Blue-Eyed Rat, who scored 1.587, so a little bit of a jump in the score there. And this is his second submission. 77 symbols, 451,719 cycles, so a few less symbols, and 15,000 cycles faster. So this one, blue is doing the building. No, red is doing the building. Blue just started it off and now is waiting for it to be finished. Red will count How are we doing the counts here? Input A, so this is counting to, it looks like 8. No, this is counting to, because we have this coming back. 2, 4 times 3, so that's a 12. 24, no, times 3 again is 36, times 3 is 108. And then one more synchronize to get to 109. How did we get to 109? Count to 4. This is how we got to 109. One more A. One more input A and a synchronize there before we go into our main loop. Once we've gotten to 4, we will do our grab, rotate, drop, and run over these bond commands twice. So this bond command is only being hit once. So that means blue must be helping out on that one. Oh, there's where blue helps out a little bit. Let's see how that works when we get there. All right, last Meitnerium. Grab, hold, bond. Red grabs, hold, rotate, drop into place. Blue is just doing a little bit of delaying action here, and now red has grabbed hold. We create 1 bond, 2 bond. Blue did that bond. Red and blue do 2 bonds there, and then blue gets that bond again. So blue is handling that, and then we use our doubled up bond here. Okay, and blue has done the trick of grab and drop output if our sheet is all the way over. If it is not all the way over, then blue comes up here, moves it up 1 or down 1, a little bit of complicated, down 1 row, and we do it again. And here's our 7th place puzzle by Darius1 with our lowest symbol count yet at 67. So this one, we have our usual to save a bunch of symbols, start here and set all the flip-flops before we actually begin building our atom. Alright, so we're doing our loop of 12 minimum with counting on this. And we see here that we are eventually going to hit this synchronize. At that point, red will drag over the completed sheet if there is one, and then come back and grab the next atom and build the stick. So let's see how the stick building goes. Alright, here's our first Meitnerium. 1600 cycles, 16. Alright, we're doing a loop through here twice, and blue is actually doing the bond. And during this counting, it's these 7 flip-flops that are doing our count to 109. If you wanted to count to 128, you'd have them all pointing down to this row. And to reduce the count, you have it feed back in there and point to a previous flip-flop. So this, having those two point up, reduces our count to 109. There's our Meitnerium. So we hit our synchronize. The first time, we move it over. The second time, red there bonds our stick. Moves it up. Alright, let's see. Alright, let's see how our sticks get turned into sheets. Build our 8th Meitnerium. Trigger the synchronize. Red continues over here. And we do our timing. And now, take place. We're not doing any bonding yet until we've got the sheet positioned over our new stick. And then both Waldos help create our double bond. So when this sheet is 8 high, it will be output, but not quite yet. And in order to output, blue has to hit this out right here. And that doesn't happen until we've gone through the first 6 flip-flops. So we're going to have our atom meitnerium halfway built. So here we are, about the halfway point xenon. And this is when our stick would be output, if it was tall enough, our sheet. All right, so that's Dryas 1 solution, 7th place, for 1.593 points. Next up is Pseudodude, whose solution is just 1,000 cycles faster and 1 symbol less, so it scores a little better, scoring 1.607. And let's see how this one works. All right, doing our standard setting the flip-flops before we begin. All right, so he's using the blue to grab the hydrogens wherever they may appear. And then bouncing back down, he's got his fuser on the second row. And red is waiting here to grab it when it is finished. So blue has to do the counting. Here's our counting flip-flops here. All right, so this group of 4 counts to 16, and this group of 3 counts to 7. 16 times 7 is 112. However, this one is not going here to the alpha input. This one is being directed around it, so that takes 2 off. We're down to 110. And at the start, we came in here also avoiding the alpha input. So that's how we count to 109 in this solution. And as far as our sheets go, well, first our sticks. Red, of course, is building our sticks. And then our sheet is, we are turning through here, add the last meitnerium. Here's our rotate. Place it in here. Okay, so we're starting. All right, synchronized. Both carrying them, and then red lets go while blue does the bonds, bounce back. Red, because we bounce back on that bond command step going past it, red has to do a little helping right here, get our double bonds that way. Then, once we arrive here, red, if our sheet is 8 deep, red will grab, drop, and output it. Since it's not, blue was delayed just a moment. Blue will grab hold and move it down 1 spot. So now we're ready for the next stick. All right, so this was 6th place. Next is counterpoint. A lot more symbols, but this is a much faster solution. So here we have red is only doing a loop of size 12 instead of, in the previous ones it was doing 12 and then 14, 12, 16, 12, because it was running through a bunch of flip-flops and having to do the counting. So instead, red is going to wait on a sync and blue will do the counting. This counting mechanism here is very neat, very compact count. So what we've got here is this counts to 3. It's great how this all feeds back into the same tree right here, the same node. And we're using the corners. So here's our 3 count, here's another 3 count, and another 3 count. Actually, no, this is a 2 count, and then this is a 3 count. So that's 3 times 3 times 3 times 2. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, times 2 is 54. We are doing 2 syncs each time. through here, so that's times 2 again. There's 108. And then we had one synchronized right here at the start. So that's how we get to 109. And then we are building our stick. Blue's doing the stick building. All right, and here is our sheet building. Rotate, drop. Blue has to do all the work. Move it into place. We're doing our double bonds one at a time, like some of the other solutions did. So we move one spot, we made a double bond, move one spot, made another double bond. Come over here, drag it one more, 2 more bonds, one more position, 2 more bonds. And then we want to get it off the bonder. And finally up here, if our sheet is 8 high, we will grab it. We'll start red on its next hydrogen anyway, since the sheet is out of the way. Grab, hold, move it 2 spaces over, and output it. All right, so very nice compact counting right here. Our next solution is Rezunes, 4th place. Counterpoint scored 1.611. Rezunes scores 1.698. With this, we're also doing a loop of 12. Reason for this one is only 70 symbols. So let's see. This is a fairly complicated count. Right here, each time we do this, if we enter this right here, we're hitting 2 syncs and then 3 more, total of 5. So this little subgroup does 10 inputs. When we add that to here, this gives us an additional 3, so we're doing it 30. And then another, we're going to do it 30 times, feed back in. Well, when we started, we had 1, and we came here, so starting in here cuts us by 2, but this adds back 1 in, 29 and 30. And then 29 plus 30 is 59. This will feed back over here and get us another 30 times. So there's 89. And then the final one, when we come back in here, we cut this 3 down to a 2. So this is going to be 20 more times. 89 plus 20, 109. While doing all this counting, we do have this slightly longer path in order to grab hold if our sheet is 8 high and move it 1 spot and output it. So let's see how our sheet building works. Okay. Make our meitnerium. Bond in our last meitnerium to the stick. Grab hold, rotate, place it down at the bottom. And this is another make 2 bonds. Okay, position the sheet. Bonds. Move it over 1 spot, make 2 more bonds. Another move 1 spot, double bond, go back and use that again. We have 1 bond to go, so there it is. Move it off the bonders. Okay, but we want it to end up 1 more spot, so 1 more time with the flip-flops. Now we are done, and we start in counting to 29, 29, 30, 30, and 20, again to build our next meitnerium. Okay, so this solution is a little. Counterpoints was 429,000. This is 433. Very similar in speed. And now in third place, though, we have our fastest solution, Atomate. So this one achieves its greater speed. It only takes 370,000 cycles to build all 10 sheets by putting red in a much tighter loop, a loop of size 8. So that means red is not going up here to grab the atom that comes in here. So blue has to do that. Blue helps out. It is also in a loop of size 8 at a minimum. Grab, hold, and drop off the atom here close enough that red can grab it without having to enlarge its loop. However, blue can only do a loop of size 8 every other time through here because it's got to do the counting to 109. And here is our count. So we have our 7 flip-flops, and we are feeding back in here. We wish to go on, and if we wish to cut the count down a little bit, we come back around this way. Also note that a lot of the solutions brought the hydrogen to the fusion point, so the hydrogen would vanish into the fuser. This one is doing it the opposite direction. If it's holding a hydrogen, and it will hold the product when it hits the fuse command and then drop it off there. So let's see how our Meitnerium stick building works. Okay, we have built our Meitnerium. Now red is waiting, blue grabs hold, do our bond 4 times. When our stick is size 4, we will go here, grab hold, rotate, drop it into position down here. So let's see that in action. All right. Our second stick is now built. Grab hold, position it there. Grab this one. Now we're doing our bounce back technique. We make our first bond and then we grab hold. So we're making the bonds one at a time, bounce back through, make the second bond as we come back over. And now we're going to do our check if our sheet is 8 high. Grab hold, drag it over, output it. Since it isn't, here when we got back in our loop, we created a third bond. We didn't want it, so we got to get rid of it. Park it up there, and then make our next stick. So this is also very similar to how I did it. I positioned my 2 bonders the same place and used move over to rotate, position the bomb stick here. So this is our fastest solution. Score of 1.747. But it was a little high on the symbol count, so there were 2 solutions that scored a little better. This solution could have used a lot fewer symbols. One is right here. We can simply just do without that. But a classic trick to save a bunch of symbols is interesting how it seems you always want your flip-flops to start activated. So we're having to put a bunch of arrows next to these flip-flops. So of course one thing we can do is if we back the start up, in this case we would like to put the start right there. Then we change the directions of all the flip-flops and get rid of these arrows. So this, we don't want to go over here yet. We just want to feed through the loop. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 symbols reduced. Now when we come down here, we could stop here, but instead we're going to cycle through the rest of this so we can get rid of, change that, a 6th symbol, and then we can get rid of this final one here, 7. And so at a cost of, let's see how many more cycles that cost us. 45 cycles, we knocked the symbol count down by 7. And removing those 7 symbols raised the score from 1.747 to 1.819. Which would have made this a second place puzzle. So 7 symbols, that's pretty big. In second place, however, we have Sir Baldric. So this one, just 64 symbols, and still reasonably fast. We have our loop of size 12, so that puts our cycles in the 438,539 cycles. And here is our flip-flops for counting. So Sir Baldric is using, instead of a loop, he's bouncing back. So this works the same as a loop, effectively. I mean, you're just going through that flip-flop, same as if you were going through a loop. And then we're getting to 109. We either feed back here into the first flip-flop, or we feed back into the sync, which has the effect of giving us 2 syncs or 1. So this little cluster right here counts to 7. So here we are, we're about to, and this doubles it for 14, so 1 more hydrogen and aluminum, 14. Double it again. When we get to this point, we'll be at 28. 28 doubled is 56, but we are feeding back here, so that knocks 1 off, 55. 55 doubled is 110, minus 1 gets us to 109. And then we are doing our fairly similar to a lot of other solutions. Grab our sheet if it's 8 high, drag it over and output it. If it's not, we have to remove the extra bond. Grab hold of it and move it down 1 row. And before we get to that point, of course, we build our sheet. So we're doing our bounce back here. Okay, position it on the leftmost atom. Run over, make our bonds. Okay, I wonder why he did 2 bonds. Well, he's going to grab hold here and run it back. Drop. Okay, then do our check and then drag it over the rest of the way. All this is only 64 symbols. So, a score of 1.767. Second place. And finally, in first place, we have Tough Thought. This scores first place with an incredible just 59 symbols. And once again, we have our loop of 12, so this is reasonably fast. 424,929 cycles. And like so many other solutions, we're building our stick, then we grab hold and rotate. Position it, grab hold of our sheet, bond, make our vertical bonds with our technique of bouncing through these bond commands twice. If the sheet is 8 high, grab hold, drop, output. If it is not, clear the extra bond that we will create when we run over this. Grab hold of our sheet, move it. And how do we count to 109? So this is interesting. We have these two synchronizers here, and this flip-flop and these two synchronizers. Each time we go through this little subgroup here, we are counting to 6. So 6, this counts to 3. 6 times 3 is 18. And then this, these two flip-flops, although there's a bond in between them, they're together. That's times 3 again. There's 54. And then this one times 2, 108. And the last one is this sync over here that we went through before we entered the main counting. So counting to 108 plus 1. And did that in just 59 symbols. Very good. So this is our first place. Score of 1.873. Now we had a few interesting non-scoring solutions. So let's take a look at some of those. We can see how we do the sheet building here in a moment. Alright, here is our last hydrogen. Make our stick, put it in place. And the key to saving symbols, a lot of people did the same thing, is we exit our right here. I had built one where I was dragging it over and all the way back so that I couldn't use this technique so easy, and I was doing counting. So Tough Thought made a faster solution. This one is the only one that does this, a double pumping method. Both blue and red are going to be grabbing hydrogens to build our meitneriums. Since they're both doing it, that means they both have to do counting. So we have a bunch of flip-flops for red and a bunch for blue. And the result is that we count our, there we go, 1,038 cycles to create a meitnerium. So this solution runs in 340,000 cycles. However, the 92 symbols means that it would score worse. So Tough Thought submitted the other one. Very nice. The other way to get a fast solution, Adamate's idea a little tighter. So Adamate had one of his walls doing a loop of size 8 on these two rows down here. By moving this up here, the wall that does the counting can have a loop that's as short as 6. So actually, the red Waldo will sometimes be waiting on the blue Waldo. And this is what I meant about the way I had it set up. Because I was not using the technique of grabbing the top of the sheet and dragging it over, I was instead having to count, and this takes a lot more symbols. I'm counting to 16 rather than 8 because I'm running through this track twice in order to position the sticks after I bond them. So we cycle through 6, 8, 6. A lot of times the way this count works is these three count to 5. And then this is times 2, 10 for this group. And then this group of 4 flips over here counts to 11. So that's 110. 5 times 2 times 11 is 110. Minus 1 because we entered down here rather than entering up top. So we go through our flip-flops once. Count of 109. And the result of all this is that we build our meitnerium. Well, this one we started because we had a long start to set all the flip-flops. But this is 1,026 cycles to build a meitnerium. Then when it is all built, then what happens? Here we have our second stick. We have counted to 4. A lot of solutions did that. Grab, hold, rotate, slide it in place so that we start bonding with our leftmost atom. Grab, hold, doing our bounce back technique. Let go there. This complicated flip-flop was because every time we go along this rail, we're going to come up here and we're going to bounce back. But we're also using this as our route to get the Waldo back over here and when we're done with our sheet building. So the first thing we do is we get our double bonds. And then we're going to come back through this loop and count, and if we're 8 high, then we will hit the output. If we are not 8 high, we come down this way, grab, move. But this means, and we're trying to get out now, but we can't get out yet because we've got to reset all these flip-flops. First off, this flip-flop was set, so we bounce back, grab, hold, leave it there, and then we've got to send it back in order to get our sheet back on this side. Then reset those flip-flops and finally there, and now we can start building our next stick. Alright, so this took 337,000 cycles. When I saw Tough Thought's solution and I improved this so that we are not counting anymore, we're using our grab, that dropped the count to 333,000 cycles. And the technique simplified this over here, and I had a flip-flop, so I was exiting from here up. Now the problem was, when I exited here, I had to jog over to avoid these. So here is our solution. After getting rid of the count and switching to a grab drop output way of detecting our final molecule, that dropped our symbol count from 84 to 72, but in order to get rid of that jog, it was 74 with this jog and these over here. There's what it looked like. 74 symbols. This is the fastest one. And in order to save 2 symbols and get rid of that jog, we had to move those over 1 column, which made the meitnerium formation just a little slower. But it was worth it to save those 2 symbols. So this one runs in 335,000. 2,000 more cycles, 2 symbols fewer. All right. One other interesting non-scoring solution, Pseudodude sent me this. And when I first looked at it, I was trying to understand, how does this work? We're not doing any drops anywhere on the fuser. We just have just one fuse command. And so the way this works is we're doing a timed blue and red will pass over the fuser at the same time and fuse it in, and we're storing the atom over here. So this is a very different way of doing it. Unfortunately, dragging the atom over here is pretty slow. Takes some 5,500 cycles to build our meitneriums. I didn't see any other solutions that did it quite this way. So interesting. Thank you, Pseudodude. Speaking of, I think we could have eliminated one more symbol here from your official solution. And would have even saved 6 or so cycles, 10 or so cycles. All right, everybody, that was our long slog. And one of the problems we were facing with long slog, of course, how do we deal with puzzles that take 15 minutes to run? And so what many people did, one technique was to reduce this. Instead of generating 10 outputs, edit the puzzle so that we only have to create 2 outputs for testing purposes. And then once you have a working solution, run it back up to 10 and submit it. Another popular technique was editing the puzzle to change the size of the atoms. So instead of going all the way meitnerium, we would go to something else, or we could start with bigger inputs instead of hydrogens, or both at once. Maybe we'd bring in oxygens and go to. Now, of course, the problem with that is that changes our count. Pseudodude, what he did was, before it was finished running, he was out of time. He submitted this at the very last moment, before it finished running. On the having seen an output, I would imagine at least one, so he was sure it worked. He just hadn't run it all the way, so he couldn't give me an exact cycle count when he sent it in. But that worked. I tried running several instances of SpaceChem on different computers. And I thought of the idea of running this in a virtual machine that could be made to keep time much faster. Well, that didn't work out, unfortunately. And even if it had, well, if you can only run it twice the speed, that doesn't help a whole lot. So your solutions take 8 minutes instead of 15 minutes or 16 minutes to run. All right, well, thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week with air conditioning without anthropogenic global warming.